Sato was a lonely NEET who died from overwork and woke up as the strongest in a game he built. However, when he saw top-tier baddies being used as slaves, he used his power to free them but ended up collecting them like Pokemon cards so he could clap them all day. Before all that, he spent most of his time fixing the bugs in his game. Due to the difficulty level for newbie players, he created a cheat with 3 meteor rain features to make it easier. This took him 3 days to complete, and when he finished, he decided to take a quick nap. However, when he woke up later, he found himself in a wasteland. Confused, he pulled out his phone to make a call, but it didn't go through. When he looked at the screen, he noticed he looked younger, and noticed he was in the game he was working on. Looking at his stats, he saw he was a level 1 character with 0 magical powers. Just then, he discovered that a group of armed level 50 lizardmen were heading towards him, and they attacked as soon as they got close. Sato was sure he'd be delivered to heaven's doorstep if he didn't do something, so he decided to use the meteor rain feature he had. He watched in awe as the lizardmen experienced what the dinosaurs did 66 million years ago. When the fireworks finished, he was surprised to see that one lizardman had survived the explosions, and it challenged him to a duel. Sato did his best to fight it even though he was no Mihawk, and in an unexpected turn of events, he defeated the lizardman. He then sat down to catch his breath, and while checking his stats he saw that he'd leveled up to 310 and had gained a variety of skill, loot, and money. Curious, he maximized his Meteor Rain skill to test how effective it would be, and to his utmost surprise, the impact was greater than when he used it on the lizardman. Channeling his inner flash, Sato ran, and after managing to escape getting hurt, he decided to turn off that skill, as he considered it too dangerous. He then put on the robe that was in his loot, and maximized all the skills he found useful. The following morning, he decided to head to Seryu City, the closest city to him according to the map. The map also showed him that a level 30 wyvern was in the vicinity, so he leaped in the air, hoping to spot it, but got knocked out of the sky by it when it suddenly appeared behind him. Fortunately, he was unhurt thanks to his pain reduction skill, and when the wyvern tried to attack him again, he chased it away by throwing a rock at it. However, he soon realized his mistake when he saw that it was heading towards a warrior's fort, so he chased after it. By the time he arrived, the soldiers were already engaged in a battle with the wyvern. One of the mages attempted to bring it down with an air spell, but the wyvern used its tail to smack the spell back in her direction and sent her flying. Her friends tried to save her using a spell called Resist Fall, but all it did was slow her descent, so Sato leaped into the air like Superman and saved her, earning himself the title of Savior. After he landed back on the ground, the girl thanked him for saving her and introduced herself to him as Zena, a military mage. She also gave him unwanted information like her relationship status.
But what the hell, boy?
And Seryu told himself that if he were still a hormonal teenager, he'd be all over her like a dog in heat. Just then, an arrow whizzed past his head and got stuck in a nearby tree as Lelio and Iona, Zena's comrades, ordered him to step away from her. Having no choice, Sato stepped forward and introduced himself to the girls as a traveling merchant, but they didn't believe him, pointing out his lack of wares. Realizing his mistake, Sato quickly activated his Pinocchio skills and told them that his pack horse had run off during the meteor rain. This lie earned him trickery and persuasion skills, but it still wasn't enough to convince the soldiers that he was who he said he was. They asked for his identification papers and he told them that they were in the cloak that the pack horse ran away with. Fortunately, his talk no jutsu worked this time around, and they told him that they would issue him new papers once they got to the city. On their way to the city, Sato learned that this new world had slaves, so he checked his map to see the city's demographics. He learned that 20% of its residents were slaves, some of whom were demi-humans. They soon arrived at the city, and Zena bid Sato farewell, but promised to see him later to repay her debts to him. Sato assured her that she didn't have to, but the stubborn girl insisted that she would do it. After she left, Iona took Sato to get his papers, and the man instructed him to place his hands on something called the Yamato Stone. As soon as he did, all his information popped up, but to his surprise, his level and skills hadn't been updated. Sato felt relieved by this, as he didn't think he could explain how he did the whole solo leveling thing without stepping into a dungeon. Once his papers were ready, he was given an entry visa valid for 10 days and told that he could request an extension if he wished to stay longer. He was also informed that if he was caught with an expired visa, he'd be made to pay a fine. However, if he couldn't pay, he'd be turned into a slave. After leaving the station, Iona showed him the way to an inn and parted ways with him. On his way to the inn, a big melon baddie latched onto his arm and tried to convince him to try out her inn. Coincidentally, she worked at the same inn Iona had recommended, so he allowed himself to be dragged inside and introduced to Mosa, the innkeeper. After he paid for 10 days' lodging, he requested a meal and was given leftover pie, since that was all they had. After Moses served him the pie, she sent Martha to do something and had a little chat with Sato. During their chat, he learned that there once lived a demon lord who died about 60 years ago at the hands of the hero. After Moses left, Sato began eating and was enjoying his meal until Martha suddenly showed up. Uninterested in hearing her yap, he asked where he could get general supplies and clothes from. Martha told him the places to check out, but decided to take him there herself, since she believed his sense of direction was only as good as Zoro's.
But what the hell, boy?
As they walked through the market, Sato noted that it was common for the people to haggle prices with the vendors. His attention was soon drawn to a commotion involving some slave demi-humans and a boy who spoke harshly to them because of what they were. Seeing as he hated bullying, Sato intervened and told the boy to pick on someone his size. Thinking the slaves belonged to him, the boy told him to keep them on a leash and walked away angrily. Sato then turned his attention back to the girls, and after picking up their fallen firewood, he advised them to be careful while walking in a crowded place. The girls thanked him and rushed to inform an older slave girl about what he'd done, and she bowed her head to thank him. After they left, he returned to Martha, who said it was surprising to see someone treating demi-humans with kindness. It turned out that they were hated because farmers and hunters were often attacked and unalived by demi-humans. But Sato figured those who committed those acts were bandits and thieves. They then continued shopping and stopped at a stall selling masks and wigs. The stall owner explained that the masks were for those playing the role of the dragon, while the black wigs were for those playing the role of the hero. Additionally, the blonde wigs were for those playing the role of the hero's friends or the princess. For some reason, Sato bought a mask and a blonde wig, and as he pondered why he'd spent money on cosplay items, a wagon carrying slaves drove by. One of the slaves caught his attention, and since he could see her stats, he concluded that she'd be trouble for whoever bought her. Eventually, they returned to the inn, and after having dinner, Sato lay in bed thinking about everything that had happened since he woke up in the valley. He finally accepted that he wasn't dreaming, so he decided he would enjoy the city and gain experience while trying to find a way to return home. The following morning, Martha woke him up and informed him that his girlfriend was looking for him. Confused, he got dressed and went downstairs to find Zena waiting for him, and she nervously told him that she'd come to take him on a tour of the city. As they walked around the city, buying street food, a young boy bumped into Zena, causing her to stain her blouse, just as Sato suggested. Finding a dry cleaner, a cloaked individual approached them and offered to do it with magic. She took them to an alley and, as she chanted the spell to remove the stain, Sato acquired the ability to use everyday magic. It turned out that his cheat-level abilities were off the charts, allowing him to acquire more skills without having to work hard for them. As he and Zena continued on their way, he inquired about her magic and asked if one had to enroll at Hogwarts to learn it. Zena explained how chanting spells worked and said that magic users usually started out reciting children's picture books with the history of magic in them. Soon, they came across a vendor selling some healing ointment, so after Sato purchased a few, he asked Zena to take him to the top of the city wall. While enjoying the view, Zena told Sato that the only threats a city like theirs faced were wyverns and offered to take him to the mills, which functioned as a battery during a wyvern attack. Before heading there, they dropped by the Palian Temple, and Zena showed him the tapestry depicting the battle between the hero and the demon lord. The hero's sword was blue, so Zena explained that it was because he had the title of hero. However, if the sword accepted someone who wasn't the hero, it would only shimmer blue, meaning people other than the hero could wield the holy sword. And as soon as she said this, Orna, the temple's priestess, showed up voicing her disagreement. According to her, only heroes who answered the call of the goddess Palian could fight the demon lord, so it made no sense for someone who wasn't a hero to wield the sword. Zena didn't try to challenge her statement, and then introduced Orna and Sato to each other. After which, Orna teased her about finally bagging herself a man, even though he was a tall glass of ugly. As Zena complained about Orna's teasing, someone called out to the priestess, asking for her help, so she bid farewell to them and left. Sato and Zena also left the temple, and while Zena bargained with a cart driver, Sato checked his stats to see what titles he had. To his surprise, he saw that he had the title of God Killer, because his meteor rain had unalived the dragon god who dwelled in that valley, making him unbelievably powerful. A little while later, as the cart moved through the city, Zena pointed out the anti-dragon towers to Sato and explained how they worked. One of the towers had been destroyed during a dragon attack 2 years ago and was being rebuilt. Curious, Sato asked if the hero had been around to slay the dragon, and she told him no, explaining that heroes were only summoned during a summoning event. The last time one was summoned was 66 years ago, when the demon lord attacked. Wanting to know more about the Demon Lord, Sato asked if Demon Lords had the power to control monsters, and Zena answered that it depended on the Demon Lord in question. From what she knew, some had the power to control demons, and that was a hassle because demons couldn't be slayed by breathing techniques. To defeat them, one had to possess magic or magical weapons, as those were the only things that could hurt them. Just then, their cart stopped at the square where a small crowd gathered to listen to the head priest of the Zaikun temple. He convinced the people to stone the demi-human slaves Sato had met in the market to death, saying it would get them back in God's good grace. Zena immediately jumped out of the cart and went to stand in front of the girls as the people began stoning them. As she tried to convince them that what they were doing was wrong, Sato scanned the area looking for oddities. He discovered that the girl's master, a slime ball named Urs, and his guild members had planned the whole thing to swindle people. Immediately, he began knocking them out without anyone noticing because they were busy stoning Zena, whom the priest had convinced them was siding with demons. When a priest from the Galrian temple showed up, trying to defend her, the bald fatso of a priest accused him of also siding with demons. Fortunately, before he could turn the people against him, Sato knocked Urs unconscious and tossed him before the crowd. He told the people that Urs had lent his slaves to the priest who lied about the stones being holy so that they could take the people's money. However, his true objective was to use the Zaikun temple to brainwash the people into a rebellion against the count. This got the people angry, and just as one of them asked if Urs had been controlling the demons from the shadows, a demon burst out of Urs' chest. As the people ran away panicking, Zena asked Sato to get the slaves to a safe place, but when he tried to free them, they told him they couldn't leave. Urs had ordered them not to move, and in that word, a master's word was absolute and unbreakable. Refusing to leave them there to die, Sato tried to find a loophole and discovered that they no longer had a master since Urs was dead, so he freed them. Just then, the demon declared that he would create a nest for his master and cast a spell which pulled everyone in the vicinity into it. When Sato awoke later, he was in a room with the slaves, and they heard the demon's voice challenging them to try and escape the labyrinth he created. After the demon's speech, Sato turned his attention to the girls and was surprised to learn that Urs called them cat, dog, and lizard, so he renamed them Tama, Pochi, and Lisa. After the naming ceremony, he provided them with clean clothes, bandages, and healing ointment to treat their injuries. He also gave them some food and water before using his map to check the layout of the labyrinth to see which path was the best to follow. After deciding, he checked the girl's stats again and saw that Lisa was the only one with combat skills, so he gave her a dagger. As they walked through the labyrinth, they came across their first monster munching on a dead person, so Sato shot it dead using his magical weapon, which he instructed them not to tell a soul about. He then cut off a piece of the monster's legs and, as he crafted it into a spear for Lisa, she retrieved the monster's core so they could trade it later. With the core secure, Sato gave Lisa the spear, and she gave the dagger to Tama, since she was less of a coward than Pochi. They then continued on their way, and with Sato's guidance, the girls learned to slay monsters, thus gaining experience, acquiring new skills and items, and leveling up. Eventually, they encountered Rimuru's distant cousin, and Sato attempted to slay it with fire but failed, so Lisa stabbed its core. While the younger girls observed the remains of the slime, Tama sensed that there was something off about one side of the wall, so she informed Sato. Curious, he checked the layout and discovered that it was a hidden door. Just then, a level 40 undead beast appeared, and when it attacked, Sato managed to toss it through the hidden door, causing it to fall into the abyss. After leaving that room, they entered another room, which had people wrapped in cocoons, so he and the girls helped them out. There were 3 in total: Viscount Belton, a slave trader named Nidoran, and the arrogant boy from the market, but refused to allow Tama to touch him, so Sato told her to leave him to his own devices. As the group moved forward, they arrived at another room, where Zena's group was fighting against slimes. Unfortunately, they were losing since they didn't know the trick about destroying their cores, so Sato ordered his girls to help them. The arrogant boy also joined the fight, claiming that he was better in combat than some useless demi-humans. However, he soon realized that he was just a synonym for Sakura, and had to be saved by Pochi and Lisa. Meanwhile, Sato spotted Zena being attacked on the other side of the room, so he rushed to save her. As soon as she saw him, she flung herself into his arms, crying and thanking the heavens that he was alive. Just then, Orna approached them and asked Sato to tell them how to defeat the slimes, and he said all they had to do was destroy the cores. Zena praised him for being smart enough to realize the slime's weakness, but he told her that it was Lisa who taught him to do it. At the mention of Lisa, Zena demanded to know if she was female, but Orna told her that it was not the time to unlock her green-eyed monster. After all the monsters were taken care of, the people gathered around Orna to pray to the goddess and Sato introduced his girls to Zena. She felt relieved knowing that Lisa was one of the slaves, and the girls thanked her for acting as a meat shield for them in the square. Their attention was soon drawn to the soldiers trying to open a locked door, but Tama pointed to another area, saying the wall was strange. Sato quickly deduced it was another hidden door like the one he'd thrown the undead beast through, and he praised Tama for finding it. The next moment, they heard the soldiers say they had found a treasure chest, and since they were greedy, they opened it. Unfortunately, it wasn't treasure but the one-eyed demon that was inside it, and he congratulated all of them for making it that far. Immediately, the soldiers got into formation to attack him and asked the Viscount to back them up with his magic. But all that was pointless. The one-eyed freak hit them with a hypnotic spell, which turned them against each other in an instant. Sato was immune to the spell, and when he realized what was happening, he knocked the girls out to prevent them from joining the fight. Surprisingly, the Viscount was also unaffected, but his firebending skills did nothing to hurt the demon because it was using protective magic. Just then, the undead beast showed up again and charged at Sato, since it had a bone to pick with him. Sato allowed himself to get hit, and since he was standing in front of the false wall, they both fell. When they got to another room, he switched things up by equipping his holy sword and cutting the monster in half. However, he noted that he also received some damage from using the sword, so he decided not to equip it again. He then searched through his inventory for his mask and wig and returned to the room where everyone else was. The first thing he did was deactivate the demon's protective spell, allowing the spells that the Viscount, Zena, and the priestess hit him with to harm him. As the demon lashed out, Sato easily dodged his attacks and sent him flying into the ceiling, using a rock. The demon couldn't believe that a mere human was about to defeat him, so he played his Uno reverse card and summoned his master. This demon was a high-level demon, and as soon as everyone saw him, they began shaking in their boots. The demon itself devoured the one-eyed demon and then addressed the people, saying he would test their strength. The next moment, he hit them with a wind spell, which sent everyone flying, but Sato caught Zena and Orna in time. When the girls began pulling the soldiers out of the way, Sato stood before the demon and challenged him. Seeing that he had a holy sword, the demon assumed he was a hero, so he fortified himself, increasing his power levels to the max. When Sato didn't attack, he hit him with deadly spells, but he remained harmed and gained resistance thanks to his insane plot armor, which granted him high-level cheat skills. Zena and the others then tried to help by attacking the demon with their spells, even though they were all low-level and hardly did anything. When the demon tried to retaliate, Sato shot him with his magic weapon, as he recalled what Zena said about magic and magical weapons being the only things that could harm a demon. He then swapped his holy sword for a staff and used the staff to channel his fire magic, which he aimed at the demon. To his surprise, the result was an explosion, and so he searched for another weapon to use. He figured that since he didn't have the title of hero and couldn't use the holy sword, he could get rid of the demon by using his divine sword since he had the title of God Killer. After they all made it out of the labyrinth, the arrogant boy approached Sato and the girls, and after he thanked them for saving him, Zena rushed over to hug Sato. Once the reunion was done, they went to the slave trader, who gave Sato ownership papers, officially making the girls his slaves. He also offered Sato the two remaining slaves that he had, a black-haired girl named Lulu and the purple-haired girl he'd seen the previous day. Her name was Arisa, and when Sato heard her pronounce his name correctly, he became suspicious. To confirm his suspicion, he whispered into their ears that they had spiders in their hair, and almost immediately, Arisa started screaming. After leaving the slaver's tent, Sato wondered who Arisa was because he'd used Japanese when he whispered in her ear. Deciding to find out later, he told them it was time to head back to the inn. However, they had to make a quick stop to eat dinner, because Lulu's stomach growled louder than a lion. While they ate, Sato left to buy new clothes for them, and on his way back, he bought some chicken skewers so they could snack on them later. He hadn't gotten very far when he spotted some hungry slave kids in an alley, so he gave them the chicken. After that, he returned to his girls and gave them their new clothes, which they happily accepted and thanked him for. When they finally arrived at the inn, Sato asked if there were any rooms available, and Mosa informed him that they weren't. Seeing the judgmental looks the other patrons were giving Tama, Pochi, and Lisa, Sato said he'd camp outside with them and asked Mosa to take Arisa and Lulu to his room. Arisa then told him not to worry, and then surprised him by addressing the people, asking them to put their prejudice aside, as it would be inhumane to have the girls sleep outside after they helped save people in the labyrinth. No one noticed that her eyes sparkled when she spoke, and almost immediately, the hostile atmosphere changed, and Mosa told her that they could make use of the stables, as there were few horses in there. Later, after Sato got Lisa, Tama, and Pochi settled in the stables, he returned to his room where Arisa and Lulu were waiting for him. When he finished getting ready for bed, he turned around to find the girls in their birthday suits and assumed they wanted to sleep that way because he was a clueless idiot. He asked them to put their clothes back on to avoid catching a cold.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man.
So the confused Arisa asked if he didn't need their services. It was at that moment he realized they wanted to clean his tool. So he explained that he wasn't that type of master. Arisa was shocked by his response, but Lulu started crying tears of relief, so he draped a blanket over her shoulder and told her that she never had to cosplay as a red light district employee ever again. For some reason, Arisa looked annoyed, and long after Sato went to bed, she attempted to seduce him. When Sato woke up, he found it strange that his body was reacting to Arisa, even though his mind fought against it. It took a while, but he eventually realized that she had cast a spell on him and quickly gave an order forbidding her from casting spells. He also ordered her to undo all the spells she'd cast, and she became annoyed. Seeing her reaction, Sato deduced that she'd also cast a hypnotic spell when she was speaking to the guests downstairs and asked why she'd used them on him. Arisa feigned ignorance, so he used his position as her master to order her to answer all his questions without lying. Having no choice, Arisa admitted she'd done it because she liked him and wanted him to like her back. She claimed it was love at first sight. But since he wasn't into flat-chested lowlies, she decided to use magic to achieve her goal. Sato was surprised by her admission, but pulled on her cheeks to discipline her for doing what she did. He then checked her stats again, and after going through her skills, he said he'd never seen any of them before. Arisa smirked when she heard this and revealed that she was Japanese just like him. However, she was reincarnated into that world after she died with all her memories intact. She then asked if he had also been reincarnated like her or gotten isekai'd before Truck-kun could get to him. According to her, those who got reincarnated had died in their old world and were reborn in that world, while those who got transferred were usually forced to appear in that world via summoning magic. Those people were either heroes or transfers who retained their original looks and attire when they arrived there. Sato told her that none of those things applied to him since he wasn't reborn and had aged almost a decade backwards to become a teenager. Intrigued, Arisa asked if he had received a high level or infinite magic powers and skills, and he explained that they were all below mid. Unimpressed, she stopped questioning him, so he asked her to tell him how she became a slave. The following day, Martha came with Zena to wake Sato up, and when they found him shirtless with Arisa beside him and Lulu mumbling about how he was being rough, they got the wrong idea. Zena immediately cursed him out, saying he was nothing but a cultured farm tool, and after she ran off, Zena apologized for interrupting his private session. The still sleepy Arisa then advised Sato to find Zena and clear things up, so he got dressed and jumped out of the window to intercept her mid-run. He swore to her that she'd gotten the wrong idea about him and managed to convince her to believe he was telling the truth. To make it up to her, he offered to take her to buy a new shawl, and when they returned they were greeted by the sneaky Arisa. She said she was glad to see that they had cleared up the misunderstanding, but Sato still flicked her head for causing the problem in the first place. He asked her to go get the others, and while she was gone, he recalled their last conversation the night before. It turned out that Arisa had been born a princess in that world, and since she had all her memories, she attempted to use them to make her kingdom wealthy. Initially, everything went well, but at some point things started falling apart, and by the time she realized what was happening, it was too late. Her kingdom was soon taken over, and while the king and crown prince were publicly executed, she and the rest of the royal household were turned into slaves. One day, a demon attacked the castle, so she escaped with Lulu and hid in the mountains where Nidoran had found them. Back in the present, all the girls except Lulu, who wasn't feeling well, stood before Sato, and he gave them some money to buy the things they needed. Once he and Zena were alone, she asked what he planned to spend the rest of the day doing. He told her that he wanted to look for a house to rent so that all his girls would be comfortable, and she offered to go with them. They went to the odd jobs office, which thankfully wasn't run by Jintoki, and asked Nadi, the staff, for help. Nadi asked what his budget was, and he said he was willing to spend as high as 1 gold coin, so she found 3 houses within that price range. But after checking them out, Sato's saw that none of them were ideal. When they returned to the office, Nadi promised to check for other suitable options and suggested that they check out the flea market to pass the time. She also told Zena about an outdoor theater, which she swore would be perfect for a date, causing the shy girl to blush. While at the market, they ran into Arisa and the others, and Sato asked Arisa why she'd changed her hair color. She told him it was because purple hair was seen as a bad thing around there, so she was trying to be cautious. They then went to a vendor selling some picture cards to help the kids learn how to read, so Sato purchased them so that Lisa and the others could learn to read with them. After that, Arisa offered to go buy tickets for the outdoor theater play. So he gave her some money and apologized to Zena for the girl's sausage blocking her. Zena assured him that she didn't mind, but he wanted to make it up to her and took her to buy jewelry. While they checked out the jewelry stall, the girls returned and dragged Zena away. Soon, the play began and Sato realized it was a ripoff of Romeo and Juliet, in which the male protagonist was unalived by a maid while the female protagonist took her own life. However, it didn't end there because the male protagonist returned as a low-budget zombie to exact revenge on those who wronged him, like he was the Punisher. Before he could unalive the evil Marcus, who separated him from his lover, he was defeated by a holy knight. Seeing as he escaped death, the Marcus turned a new leaf, but his life was still cut short by a family curse, which made no sense to Sato. After the play, Sato overheard Arisa and Zena talking about the play. Zena said she'd felt sad when the female protagonist took her life, but Arisa said it was a stupid decision. As far as she was concerned, the girl should have gotten vengeance on the Marcus, but Zena didn't agree. She pointed out that it was the female protagonist's refusal to follow her parents' wishes that led to the demise of her and her lover. This prompted Arisa to ask Zena if she'd rather marry whom her parents wanted her to marry or serve in the military for 5 years so she could avoid the engagement and return to marry Sato, whom she loved. Zena didn't know how to respond, so Arisa told her that if she couldn't sacrifice everything to be with her love, then she didn't love him. Realizing that things were about to escalate, Sato stepped in and told Ariana to apologize to Zena, and she did. He then told the girls to go get something to eat, and as he walked back to the inn with Zena, they ran into Iona, Lelio, and Rue. The girls looked pretty beat up, so Zena used healing magic on them, as they explained what happened. They said they had battled some Fang ants, and Rue believed that the cavalry of Ratmen who had crossed the border were the ones who provoked the ants in the first place. She said the leader of the Ratmen wore a red helmet, and if she ever caught him, she would send him to the gallows. When Zena finished tending to them, they heard a scream, and when they rushed in the direction it came from, they found the girls standing around a dead ant. They said it had attacked them from the sky. So Sato used his map skill to scan for more and learned that a swarm was heading to the city. Just as he warned the girls about it, the warning bells went off and they saw the ants. Fortunately, most of them were stopped by the magic barrier around the city, but some still got in, so Sato, the girls, and the soldiers took care of them. During the fight, he noticed that an ant had gotten into the odd job's office, so he rushed in there to save Natty, since the stairs leading to the place where she was were badly damaged because of the ant's venom. Thankfully, her manager arrived and used magic vines to bring her out, saving Sato the trouble of doing so. Natty thanked Sato with a kiss on the cheek and did the same for her manager.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine.
Who asked who Sato was. Natty introduced him as one of their clients, and Sato was intrigued to see that he was an elf. After leaving the office, he met Zena, who said she would join the guards to check around the city for more ants and to assist the people. As soon as she left, he turned to see Lisa with a guard who wanted to take the cores Lisa had harvested, so Sato outsmarted him. That night, while the girls had dinner, Sato went out to buy medicine for Lulu and ran into some guys who convinced him to go drinking with them, and that was how he ended up at a brothel against his better judgment.
You naughty.
On his way to the pharmacy later, he heard a sound coming from a nearby alley and went to check it out. Upon reaching there, he got attacked by some shadow clones, which he was sure hadn't originated from the Hidden Leaf Village. He managed to fight them off and discovered their target lying injured in the alley, so he tried to help him. It turned out that it was the Ratman leader that Run had mentioned, but he pleaded with Sato to leave him and get the princess he was protecting to safety. Of course, Sato didn't listen and carried both him and the princess to the Oddjob's office. Using the burglary skills he'd learned from Nami, he had unlocked the door and went inside with them. When Natty and the manager came downstairs, they were surprised to see Sato and even more surprised to see the Ratman and the elf princess, whom the manager referred to as Mia. Sato didn't return to the inn until the following morning, and Arisa complained about his spending the night out, but he ignored her and turned his attention to Lulu, who had just woken up. He handed the medicine to her, and, after telling her when to take it, he left again. When he arrived back at the off-job's office, he asked Natty how Mia and the Ratmen were doing. Natty said they were both asleep and explained that Mia's problem wasn't caused by injuries but rather a prolonged deprivation of magic. What she needed was a mana potion, which they couldn't afford, and if they could, it wouldn't be as effective as taking her to a place rich with mana. Just then, Mia woke up, so they went to check on her, and when she saw Sato, she asked if he was a spirit user. Sato told her that he wasn't, so she asked if he'd ever seen a spirit, which surprised him as he didn't even know that people could see spirits. Natty explained that only those with spirit sight could see them, and Mia had the sight and then left to prepare food for Mia. Sato stayed to look at Mia, so he engaged her in small talk, asking how to say good morning in Elvish language, and once she told him, he acquired the skill to speak Elvish. Later in the afternoon, when he returned to the inn, he found the girls playing a game with the learning cards he bought the day before. Believing that they had learned something from it, he decided to test them and was surprised to see that they referred to everything as meat. He looked to Arisa for an explanation, and she sheepishly admitted that she hadn't tried to correct them when they mislabeled the pictures. Having no choice, he took it upon himself to teach the girls the right words, but they were only interested in learning how to read and write the word meat. While he was teaching them, Martha came outside to call Uni so they could go clean the stables together. Uni told her that she'd already done that with Tama and Pachi, so Sato praised them for a job well done. When they sat down to have a picnic later, Sato told the girls about the Ratman and Mia. Hearing that she was a princess made the little ones and Arisa excited, so they begged Sato to take them to see her. Sato agreed and asked Lulu if she was feeling strong enough to go with them, and she said yes. A few hours later, he brought them to see Mia, and while they gushed over her like she was a limited edition Barbie doll, he went downstairs to speak to Natty. Lulu was with her, and when he joined them, Natty asked if he would like to purchase a horse-drawn cart. Sato told her that he had no experience driving carts, so he didn't think he'd buy it, but Lulu spoke up, saying she could teach him. Following this, he told Nettie he would purchase the horse and cart she suggested and gave her a coin purse to pay for it. The next day, he took the girls camping and gained a lot of skills while setting up the camp with them. Tama and Pachi got spooked by the whistling kettle, as they believed it was upset, so Sato explained that it was the sound it made to signify that the water was boiling. Curious, the girls questioned why and how it made the sound, but before Sato could explain, Arisa stole the spotlight. She quickly switched from airhead to science guru, and explained the science behind boiling water to them, which impressed Sato. Later, after they had eaten and the girls were playing, the beast folk kid Sato had fed days ago came to bring him some nuts and berries to thank him. Sato was hesitant to take it because he knew they had nothing to do, so he offered them some beef jerky in return, claiming that he had too much. When they returned to the city later, he collected his new cart from Nady, and Arisa said that they could use it to take Mia back home. Sato told her that he'd have to speak to the manager about it and then left with Lulu for their driving lesson. Initially, Nady was quiet and reserved as she always was, but Sato managed to get her to feel free around him, and she began telling him stories about Arisa. After a while, she handed the reins to him and Sato drove the cart like he'd been doing it since he was born. On their way back to the city, he suddenly sensed a menacing aura, but for some reason, his map didn't show any enemies. All he was another cart and an owl which stared at him like it knew him. After the owl flew away, he returned his attention to the road, but couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. When they arrived at the inn, the girls came to welcome him, and they brought Mia with them. Arisa insisted that they buy something delicious to celebrate Mia's recovery, so Mia said she wanted some honey buns. At the mention of this, Tama and Pachi became excited, so Sato sent Lisa and Lulu to buy some. As they walked away, he sensed the aura again, and when he turned around, he saw the owl looking at him again. While he returned its stare, Tama commented on how strange the bird looked, and then it flew off. Ignoring the feeling, he took the girls back to the odd jobs office. So Nady informed him that the Ratman was finally awake and with the manager. He quickly went upstairs to check on him, and the Ratman thanked him for saving his life. Taking a seat beside the manager, Sato asked the Ratman to tell him what happened. It turned out that Mia had been kidnapped by some wizards and locked away in a tower like some cliché Disney princess. Fortunately, she didn't need the help of Prince Charming to escape, and that was when she met the Ratman and his people. Since the wizards knew where they were heading, they sent the flying ants to follow them, but failed to capture Mia again. The Ratman didn't know why Mia had been kidnapped, but Sato figured that the manager did. However, he wasn't forthcoming with the information, so Sato didn't push him to speak. Just as he tried to bring up his offer to take Mia home, they heard the girls scream and rushed downstairs to see what was happening. To their surprise, he learned that they had been frightened by the sound of thunder. They immediately clung to Sato, and as they begged him to save them from the angry Thor, Tama noticed the owl sitting in the room. It took Sato a few seconds to notice what she was staring at, and before he could react, a cloaked figure appeared beside the owl. Everyone was stunned, and when the Ratman attempted to attack him, he cast a spell which weakened everyone. Arisa was able to resist it thanks to her psychic powers, and Sato quickly activated his resistance skill. He then checked their attacker's stats and saw that his name was Zen, just the male protagonist from the play they watched the other day. When Zen addressed Mia, saying he had come to take her back, Sato stepped in front of her and defiantly said he'd let him take Mia over his dead body. He charged at Zen, hoping to knock him out with his martial arts skill, but when he attempted to pull a saidama, his hand passed through Zen's body. As he tried to figure out what in the Casper, the friendly ghost, had happened, Zen controlled his shadows to grab him. So Arisa got angry and hit Zen with a spell, which only succeeded in moving his hood and revealing his face. Shocked, she accidentally called him Brook, but Zen warned her not to compare him to a cultured degenerate cad like that Afro-skeleton, and tried to attack her with his shadows. Thankfully, Sato prevented that by shooting at the tentacles while the manager rushed to stand in front of her. Sato also freed himself, and as he came to lend them a hand, he noticed that Arisa was preparing a spell behind her back, so he aimed his gun at Zen to keep him distracted. Eventually, Arisa called out to him to move, so he jumped out of the way, and she hit Zen with an explosive spell. If she had been any stronger, Zen would have been reduced to dust, but unfortunately, she only managed to hurt him a little. Seeing her hair return to its original color, Zen deduced that she had been reincarnated, but she was too weak to respond to him and passed out. Sato tried shooting Zen with his magic weapon, but his protective shield was too strong to penetrate. Zen then told Sato to advise Arisa against using the unique skill she used against him. Following this, he grabbed Mia with his shadows and told Sato that if he wanted her back, he should come to the cradle. The moment Zen's shadow portal closed, Lisa and Lulu arrived, so Sato instructed them to get help for Arisa and the others while he went after Mia. He jumped into Mia's shadow portal before the girls could stop him and found himself floating in a dark abyss. He tried using his map to find out his location, but there was no map available for the area. Confused, he started glitching, and when his body started looking like code, he cried out in annoyance, and the next moment, the scene changed. He found himself in a throne room where an unconscious Mia was being attended to, and a surprised Zen demanded to know how he'd escaped his shadow prison. Sato lied that he possessed a light amulet which prevented magic from working on him, and this annoyed Zen because he felt Sato had cheated his way out of his trial. He then declared that Sato hadn't earned the right to battle him, so he had to return to the start. Sato ignored what he was yapping about and tried to go get Mia. But before he could get far, Zen snapped his fingers and he found himself outside. Before him was a large tree which he figured was the cradle, so he decided he would play by Zen's rules and conquer it. He then made his way inside, and after fighting monsters, he arrived on a floor where a dryad resided, but she had no interest in fighting him and instead asked him to give her mana. Before he could react, she kissed him and then thanked him by opening up a corridor to what used to be a laboratory. As he went through the books there, he learned that the creator of the cradle was Mia's ancestor, and he'd created it, hoping it would help instill the will to survive into young elves when they faced danger. However, he had sealed it away before he died, so that when his fellow elves needed it, they would find it waiting. After reading the cradle's history, Sato returned to the dryad and asked for directions to the top floors. She asked him to stand in the middle of a fairy ring, so she could send him to the 100th floor, and warned that the guardian of the floor was tough. When he arrived there, he found 3 female homunculus and wondered if he'd stepped into the Fullmetal Alchemist universe. The girls congratulated him for making it that far, but said that if he wanted to proceed, he had to defeat the Iron Golem. Sato said nothing as the girls activated the golem, and when it began approaching him, he simply shot one of the letters on its head. Seeing this, one of the girls asked the other 2 to flee while she fought Sato, but before they did, they helped her to launch an attack. Sato dodged the girl's attacks before easily knocking her out with one punch. Being the gentleman that he was, he took her along with him to the next room, and while she slept, he continued exploring the cradle and soon found a second dryad. This one was all dried out, so he offered up a prayer and poured some water on her to revive her. As soon as she regained consciousness, she took some of his mana, and he asked her to transport him to the top floors, so she sent him to the 180th floor. He had to fight off some giant bugs before he could advance, and when he arrived at the throne room, Zen was surprised. However, he said Sato hadn't yet earned the right to battle them.
Do me a favor, please. Get out of here.
So he'd send him to fight someone, and if he won, he'd earn the title of hero, as well as the holy sword Jallarhorn. His opponents turned out to be the 2 homunculus who escaped him, along with 5 others he hadn't met and some golems. Zen was sure Seryu would lose, so when he gave his fighters a magic boost, he did the same to Sato and said he was looking forward to seeing a gladiator-level fight. The battle didn't last very long as he easily destroyed the golems and showed the girls who their daddy was. Before the last girl passed out, she pleaded with him to make her master's wish come true. Zen then congratulated Sato on his victory and gifted him the holy sword he'd promised. Curious, Sato asked what he truly desired, and Zen answered that he was searching for a hero who could end his life.
What?
He said that his first life had ended tragically, So God took pity on him and allowed him to be reborn into a respectable family that loved him. When he grew up, he fell in love and got married to a woman he believed was way out of his league. Unfortunately, a greedy noble also fell in love with his wife, so to keep her for himself, he had Zen executed under false pretenses. After his death, he was shown the image of his family, who had been slaughtered, and his wife, who had also died because of what happened. Enjeered by the fate that befell them, he arose from the dead and turned the remains of his family into a walking dead army and got his revenge. Sadly, because of the blessing bestowed on him by God, he couldn't die and reunite with his wife. However, now that Sato was there, he wanted him to strike him down before he became an evil demon lord. Understanding his plight, Sato granted his wish, and Zen laughed happily, saying he could finally reunite with his wife. Once he was gone, Sato picked up his ring, but the next moment, something resembling a poof of smoke arose from his robe. When Sato tried to cut it with his sword, it told him that he'd won that round but promised they would meet again as it flew away. The next moment, a self-destruct message was heard, so he rushed to Mia and administered some mana potion to wake her. Once she regained consciousness, he asked if she could shut off the self-destruct sequence, and Mia said she could try. However, when she saw the controls, she told him she couldn't do it. Sato tapped on it to see if there was a way out, and he discovered that Zen had set things up to ensure that Mia got out, so he came up with a plan. He had Mia take the 7 homunculus in the throne room with her and promised that he'd come find her once he rescued the one he left on the lower floor. As soon as they left, he broke into a race against time, dodging anything that could crush him while he made his way to the homunculus. After he found her, he returned to the Dryad and asked her to transport them outside the cradle, but she asked for mana and some seeds in return. Immediately, he offered her the nuts and berries the beast folk kids had given him. After eating them, she took his mana via kiss
Yeah, boy.
and transported them to the base of a hollow tree just outside the cradle. Despite the cradle turning into a sea of salt that was about to swallow them whole, the Dryad chose to remain in the forest. Sato thanked her for the help she rendered to him and took off running as though he was trying to beat Usain Bolt's world record. He soon got to a body of water, but that wasn't enough to slow the salt down. However, he suddenly got a bright idea after recalling Arisa's lecture on boiling water. Immediately, he began using his fire shot spell on the water, hitting it with as many shots as he could to ensure that it reached boiling point. It eventually did, and this formed a sort of water wall, which stopped the salt's advance and allowed him to get to safety. He continued his journey to find Mia, and when he arrived at the meeting point, he saw that his girls were also there. Lisa was the first one to hug him, and as she cried her heart out in relief, he apologized for making them worry. Arisa and Lulu were the last to join the group, and as he watched his fake tsundere crying, he recalled Zen's advice that he stop Arisa from using the power bestowed on her by God so that she wouldn't end up like him. He snapped back to the present just in time to hear Arisa tell him to promise never to attempt being a daredevil again. Just as all the girls started crying, Mia and the manager approached them, so he crouched down to Mia's level, and she thanked him for saving her by kissing his forehead. After that, he met with the homunculus, who thanked him for not letting them perish, as well as granting their master's wish. After he handed them Zen's wedding ring, they swore their loyalty to him, saying he was their new master, much to Arisa's annoyance. The only thing they asked for was that he allow them to journey to Zen's hometown to leave his ring at his wife's grave. However, they told him to pick one of them to stay back and guard him, but he refused to pick one person, so they decided through a game of rock, paper, scissors. The homunculus he saved was the winner of the game, so he gave her the name Nana before they began the journey home. At some point, they parted ways with her sisters and the Ratman, and then continued on their way to the city. Once they arrived, Sato went to the station where he got his papers to explain what had happened. He convinced the man that he'd been abducted by a necromancer with a vendetta against the kingdom and was saved by a group of 6 swordsmen. A few moments later, Senna rushed in crying, so the man gave them some privacy, and after she calmed down, they had a nice chat. He'd apologized for worrying her and gifted her the earrings he'd purchased at the flea market. He then informed her that he had promised to take Mia back home, and she became worried, thinking he wouldn't return. Sato assured her that he'd return, but she only relaxed after he pinky promised that he would. On the day of their departure, Zenna chased after them on horseback, so they stopped to allow Sato to speak to her. She told him she couldn't go with him, but said that once her brother became the new head of the family in the spring, she would join him wherever he was. Hours after they left Seryu City, Sato and the girls stopped to eat lunch, and a little while after their meal, he found Lisa making pancakes. When he asked why, she explained that they were snacks for the road, so he kept quiet. However, Arisa came out of nowhere as usual and inserted herself into the conversation like one of those annoying pick-me girls. She told Lisa that she would store the pancakes in her item box and explained to Sato that it required mana to deposit or withdraw items. Curious, Sato compared it to his storage after he acquired it, but since he didn't have time, he decided to check them out later. He then gathered the girls and together they loaded the cart, tended to the horses, and fixed the straw cushions. Soon after the cushions were fixed, Sato made stuffed animals for all the girls except Lisa, Lulu, and Arisa, who didn't hide their disappointment. He soon continued on their way again, and after a few more hours they took another break. He allowed the girls to play for a bit, but when Lisa mentioned that it was about time they started moving again, he sent Tama and Pochi to scout the area so Arisa accompanied them. While they were gone, he spotted Mia playing a tune using a leaf as she sat under a tree with Nana. Intrigued, he joined them and complimented Mia's skills, which made her very happy. Mia then taught everyone except those who went scouting to play a tune on the leaf, and for some reason, Sato's tune sounded like a dying cat. Refusing to give up, he increased his mastery of the skill, but that didn't do anything to change the fact that he wouldn't make it in the folk music industry. Arisa returned while he was doing this embarrassing performance, and after she made it known that he was terrible, she asked him to come with her. They went to the stand atop the fallen stones, which Sato soon realized were stone torii, indicating that a shrine used to be there. As he kept staring at them, he was suddenly drawn into a memory of a younger version of himself speaking to a girl with weirdly colored hair in a shrine. The girl had told him that they would always be together, no matter what world or era they were in, and she referred to him as Ichiro. He asked if she believed in reincarnation, and she answered that the lifespan of humans and gods was different, which was why they had to pray to the gods to ensure that they stayed together no matter what happened. The memory soon shifted to the girl performing the Kagura dance, a dance offered to a deity who fell in love with a human. Just as she concluded the dance, Sato was pulled back to reality by the sound of Arisa's voice, and she questioned why he'd gotten lost in thought. Sato didn't respond as he was still trying to figure out who that girl was and what the memory was about. Annoyed, Arisa moved away, and at that moment his system informed him that the torii was actually a travel gate. He immediately told Arisa about it, and she excitedly asked if he could fix it, but he said no. After they got off it, Pochi returned with the animal she caught, so Lisa offered to skin and cook it. However, when Lulu begged her to teach her how to skin animals, she decided to let her do it. Tama returned shortly after with a baby monster which Arisa found cute and requested to carry. Unfortunately, she didn't hold on to it properly and the animal escaped, making Tama feel sad, but they cheered her up, saying she could always hunt next time. Since they were hungry from hunting, Arisa brought out the pancakes she stored in her item box and gave them to them even though she was unhappy that they were no longer hot. The following day, as they continued their journey, Sato discovered that he'd gained Zen's spellbook, so he took the time to go through it. He learned that most of the magical sequences were written like programs and wondered if a programmer had created that world's magic. Nevertheless, he looked for a spell that allowed one to perform everyday magic like washing up but found none. Refusing to give up, he decided to make a new spell and got so carried away that he didn't realize he was groping Nana until Arisa screamed at him. He apologized for his mistake and explained that he'd been lost in thought, trying to create a new spell he wanted Mia to try out. Just then, he was alerted to the presence of Ratman and deduced that they were the comrades of the Ratman commander. He asked the girls to pull over, and after striking a deal with their captor, the Ratman were freed. Sato told them they would make camp in that spot for the night, but the Ratman said they had an urgent matter to take care of and couldn't stay. It was then agreed that they would all meet up the next day, and after they left, Sato went hunting with Tama. They caught a deer and Tama was so proud that she'd redeemed herself after losing her catch the day before. While the older girls went off to prepare dinner, Sato had Mia test out the new spell on Tama, and it worked perfectly. Later that night, while the girls slept, Sato sat by the fire, checking the effectiveness of the item box compared to his storage. After a few experiments, he realized that the item box was inferior to his storage in more ways than one. Suddenly, an idea came to him, so he set 2 pieces of paper on fire and stored each in the item box in storage. When he removed the one from the item box, he saw that the fire had gone out, but when he did the same for the one in his storage, he saw that it was still burning. Armed with this knowledge, he put the pot of stew in his storage, so when he brought it out in the morning, it was still piping hot. Shortly after they began their journey again, they ran into the Ratman and were shown the grave of their friends who died protecting Mia. They all paid their respects to them, and Mia implored the trees to allow them to rest in peace. A few days later, they came across a man who was being harassed by the guard who tried to take their cores back in Seryu City. After he rode away, Sato approached the poor man he'd been harassing and offered him a healing potion for his dislocated shoulder. When he returned to the cart, Arisa told him that he wasn't Santa Claus, so he should stop giving away potions they would probably need in the future. Hearing this made him ponder the idea of making potions himself, so when they stopped to rest later, he decided to give it a shot. He first prepared a medicinal concoction for high fever, after which he activated a transmutation tablet and placed the concoction on it. It didn't take long for the potion to form, but as he flipped through the book, he learned that if he didn't store it properly, it would degrade. This made him curious, so he looked under the potion vial he had and noticed that there was a special seal placed there. Soon it was night, and while the girls slept, he worked on creating a magic item. Arisa was the only one awake, so she came to find out what he was doing. He showed her his creation, and she excitedly tried it out, wanting to see what it could do, but became disappointed when she saw that it was as useless as Patrick Starr's brain. However, when Sato transferred mana into it, it suddenly overloaded and exploded, causing the others to wake up in a panic, so he apologized for disturbing their sleep. The following day, as they drove to the next city, Sato noted that unlike Seryu County, the map of the county they were in had a lot of blank areas. Not wanting to accidentally wander into a death trap, he made a mental note to check them out when he could. Soon, they arrived at the city of Noki, and Sato immediately went searching for an alchemy shop. Someone directed him and Lisa to one at the edge of time, and just as they got there, two men came rushing out with one carrying a large stack. Sato found their behavior odd but brushed it aside as he entered the shop with Lisa and Tao. He asked the shopkeeper for a few items, and she told him she had all except for vials, because the two men who had just left had bought them all. She told him that if he needed them desperately, he should check out the pottery and buy from them directly. After leaving the shop, Sato instructed Lisa to head back alone, saying that he had somewhere he wanted to visit. He went to the pottery first, but had no luck getting the vials, so he left. Later, when night rolled around, he wrapped his face in bandages and put on a cloak to hide his identity while he exchanged monster cores for some magic scrolls at the alchemy shop. After purchasing the scrolls, he opened them and acquired all the skills, as he was sure they would come in handy. He then began exploring the forest until he got to an area which didn't appear on his map. As soon as he crossed the threshold, he realized that the place was protected by a barrier, and according to his map, the area was known as the Forest of Illusion. Unimpressed by how normal it looked, Sato thought to head back, but he was suddenly attacked by a witch. He'd easily dodged her attacks, as he tried to explain that he hadn't meant to trespass, but the girl refused to listen. When she realized she couldn't do anything to him, she cried out for her mistress, and the next moment, a large bird landed on her. Sitting on the bird's back was an older witch, and when she got off, she bowed to Sato and introduced herself. Later, at her house, she apologized to Sato on her apprentice's behalf and said the girl hadn't known he was an elven emissary. Sato wondered what gave her that idea, but when he noticed the bell that the ratman had given him, he realized why. He immediately corrected the assumption, saying he wasn't an emissary but someone who had an elf under his care for the time being. Just then, the apprentice, Ein, came in, and she profusely apologized to Sato for attacking him, but he told her that it was his fault for carelessly walking into their territory. With everything cleared up, Ein began stirring a big pot of potions, and she told her mistress that the potion would be ready in time to fulfill their part of the pact. Curious, Sato asked what pact she was talking about, so the witch explained that in exchange for keeping people out of the Forest of Illusion, they deliver 300 potions to the Count of Kohaninu twice a year. Seeing that Sato was interested in potions, the woman offered to teach him a special recipe in exchange for him delivering a letter for her. A little while later, long after Sato left the witch's house, he went to a bar to meet with a potter, and while waiting for the man to arrive, he overheard two men talking about the pact. He tried to listen in on their conversation, but got distracted by the arrival of the potter. The man told him that due to regulations, he couldn't make and sell vials to him. However, if he came to his workshop to learn, he could take the ones he made. Just then, the conversation of the suspicious men drifted into his ears again, and he heard one ask the other to make him his assistant when he became the viceroy. His companion replied that he was aiming to become a count, and when that happened he would build a new town. Unfortunately, Sato didn't hear the rest of the conversation because Arisa suddenly popped out of nowhere with Mia and Nana, and told him it was time to go. The next day, on their way to the pottery workshop, Sato sensed that Anne was in danger, so he and the girls rushed to her aid. They realized that those chasing her were trying to steal the potions, so they engaged the men while she drove into town. Unfortunately, her attackers had a backup plan, and the moment she drove through the gates they made sure she crashed, and the potions got damaged. Sato and the girls helped her gather the ones that were still intact, and discovered that 180 had been damaged in the crash. Anne was worried it would affect the batch, but Sato managed to calm her down, and accompanied her to deliver the ones that weren't damaged. Sadly, the assistant viceroy said that he wouldn't accept the delivery unless it was the agreed number. Sato thought he sounded familiar, but couldn't place where he'd heard it before, and he also found it strange that the greedy guard was with him. Suddenly it dawned on him that they were the two individuals he had seen at the pub, and realized that they were responsible for the attack on Ein. However, he didn't call them out and managed to convince the Viceroy to give them until sundown to deliver the complete shipment of potions. After leaving the Viceroy's office, Arisa and Sato told Ein not to worry because they would help her. But she told them that it couldn't be done. She explained that even if they made the potions, as long as they didn't have vials to put them in, there was nothing they could do. Refusing to give up, Sato and the girls rushed to the potter's workshop to ask for his help, and he agreed to help even though it was an impossible task. Sato thanked him and divided the tasks among them, asking the demi-humans, Lulu and Nana, to help him make the vials while Mia and Arisa helped Ein to make the potions. Immediately, they all went to work, but the girls struggled to whip the clay into shape and almost gave up. On the other hand, Sato seemed to be a pro at pottery, so the potter commended him and praised his skills. Unfortunately, despite all the progress they had made, the potter informed them that it was in vain, as it usually took 5 days for the vials to dry. After hearing this, Sato figured that all they had to do was reduce the moisture in the clay, so he decided to create a new spell that would dry it instantly. After creating the spell, he had Mia test it out, and thankfully it worked well, so they returned to making the vials with more zeal. They finished long before sundown, and after Mia dried all of them up, Sato and the potter placed them in the kiln. While they were being fired, Ein and the others came to inform them that the potions were ready and thanked them for all the help they gave her. Just then, her hat moved and they realized it was a bird, and not just any bird but the witch's familiar. As Nana and Arisa began gushing over it, that ugly half-witted guard showed up with some goons. He accused the potter of making vials to sell, but the man said that wasn't true and explained that he'd simply held a class for Sato and the others. Of course, he refused to listen because he was looking for a reason to destroy the vials, and since the potter couldn't prove the vials weren't for sale, he ordered his lackeys to destroy them. After they finished, he walked off happily, saying he was looking forward to the delivery of the 300 potions by sundown. Sato apologized to the potter for getting his kiln destroyed and then asked him to give him a moment alone with the girls. After he walked away, Sato asked the crying Ein if he could use the witch's familiar to speak to her, and she said yes. A little while later, Arisa inspected the broken vials and was surprised to see that the broken pieces weren't the vials. Confused, she turned to Sato for an answer, and he revealed that he'd moved the vials to a safe place before the kiln was broken into. She then asked him to bring them out, so he went into the kiln and removed one of the vials from his storage box. To their surprise, it broke into pieces as soon as it came out, and Sato realized it was because of the sudden temperature change. The vials had still been very hot when he stored them away, and since his storage box kept every item in the same condition as it was put in, they remained that way. Arisa implored Sato to find a way to cool the vials down before removing them, and as he thought of what to do, he suddenly remembered her item box. Immediately, he tested out his theory by transferring a vial into the item box and using a blow spell on it. When he returned the vial to his storage, he saw that the temperature had dropped, so he did the same thing for the remaining vials. When he finished, they went to inform the girls, who were filled with relief that all their hard work hadn't been in vain. However, when they arrived at the assistant viceroy's office, he told them to leave, as he had been informed that they couldn't keep their end of the bargain. Sato assured him that they had delivered all the potions and requested that he sign the delivery papers. This shocked both men, and the stupid guard demanded to know what sort of trick they had used to pull off the delivery. Sato answered that it was hard work, dedication, and the power of friendship, making him wonder when he became Barney. On the other hand, the assistant viceroy didn't say a word as he stood up and went to stare out the window, ignoring everyone. Sato called out to him a few times, asking him to sign the papers, but he acted like he couldn't hear him. Just as Zen began to worry that he wouldn't sign them, the count arrived and told them that he'd do it himself. Surprised, the viceroy asked what he was doing there, and the man revealed that the witch had told him about all his wrongdoings. It turned out that when Sato requested to speak to the witch, he asked her to contact the count and inform him about what was happening, because he'd expected the viceroy to play dirty. Addressing the viceroy, the count told him he was ashamed to see that the son of his good friend turned out to be someone as vile and scheming as him. He said he'd been wrong to give him his position and was about to relinquish his title and position when the guy activated a magic circle underneath him. He chanted a spell, calling on the spirit of Sedum City to vanquish his foe, but to his surprise, the count wasn't harmed. The man told him he was foolish for believing he could harm him, and just as he pulled out his sword to give them a swift death, Sato intervened. He knocked both men out, and when the count asked why he'd done that, he reminded the man that there were young ones among them. The following day, Sato and the girls bid farewell to the potter, the witch, and Anne at the city gates. Ein gifted Sato a lamp she made, and the witch used her powers to bestow a gift on them. Meanwhile, in Seryu City, the letter he sent to Zena finally got to her, and she happily went to tell her friends about it. They encouraged her to read it and teased her for swooning when she read the part where he said he missed her. Back on the road, Sato and the girls made camp, and when it was night, Pachi asked him to read them a bedtime story. The story was about the 7 gods who descended from heaven with the world tree to live with humans. As time went on, 2 other gods joined the gods to make the 9, the dragon god and the demon god. The dragon god was peaceful and liked to sleep, but the demon god was mean-spirited and liked to stir up trouble. He created demons to worship him, but the demons picked on the other creatures in the land, so the humans cried to the young goddess. Hoping to help her people, the goddess went to the dragon god, since the other gods refused to help out, and he taught her the hero summoning spell. As Sato finished reading the story, he noticed that Pochi and Tama had fallen asleep. At the same time, in Seryu City, Zena finished reading Sato's letter, and as she stared out the window, she told herself that she couldn't wait for the day she would see him again. Do you think Sato would ever return to his world, or would he remain in the game world, collecting girls like Pokemon cards? If you've gotten this far and liked this video, comment Senpai. Also, check out this next video right here.